Feeling good on a Wednesday.
Welcome, everyone, to Fantasy Games 1, or FGW. Hope you're doing good for a Wednesday. I'm Byron Cobalts from Byron-Cobalt.com. Coming this on a Tuesday. I'm borderline catatonic.
Dr. Green isn't here right now.
Yeah, this is the second take here. No, I was not just crying during the first one, okay? Maybe a little. Can't tell I'm a Jets fan, so the emotion was sucked out of me in the last 24 hours. Talk about a roller coaster. Jeez. I'm going to try not to do a few things this week that I did in the opening video. I'm going to try not to squeak my chair too much like I just did right there. Not sure why I thought it was a good idea to put white text over top of my clearly basement dwelling body. And also, I don't know why my voice randomly turned into Trent Boyette for a couple seconds at the beginning of last week's video. Points over the last 5 weeks.
5 years. It's been 5 long, miserable years.
Nonetheless, today we're going to recap week 1. We're going to do it using Fantasy Games 1. What is that? Well, Fantasy Games 1... Fantasy Games 1 is a metric I developed that converts fantasy points into fantasy wins for your fantasy team. The player plays well, it's probably going to help you win, provided you started them. That's the idea behind the metric. I also will adjust for draft capital in what I call DFGW. The way we're going to start these every week is first by talking about who won the week.
I don't care what the scoreboard says at the end of the game. In my book, we're going to be winners.
Week 1. It was a bit of a weird week 1. I mean, last year felt like a weird week 1. I think the year before that was actually a pretty nice week 1. A lot of players that were pretty good, did pretty poorly. Yeah, if I have a cough, it's because I didn't sleep at all last night because heart ripped out of my chest and then put back in. That was... But, you know, going forward for the rest of the video, I'm going to try to use other sources of perspective as I will be running out of emotion. Back to week 1, Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill had a great week, which might partly make Dolphins owners and dynasty owners of Tyreek Hill forget the fact that he said he was going to retire after his contract's up in 2025. Can also make you think about how nice things could be. When things go well like that, and you just think how much better it could go then. Moving on. Our number 2 performer was the Dallas defense. Dallas taking care of the New York Giants. Now, I would make a 9/11 New York joke here, but I can't do that until December 29th because that is when 9/11 becomes funny.
It's been 22.3 years, so AIDS is finally funny.
Aaron Jones came in 3rd on the Fantasy Games 1 leaderboard this week, which might surprise some of you that forgot that Aaron Jones still exists. Austin Eckler and Christian McCaffrey rounded out the top 5. They were clearly not happy that wide receivers were taken with the first picks of fantasy drafts this year. Now we're probably going to enter another 5-year period where all running backs are going to go first, and then we'll have another random wide receiver year like we did now and we kind of had back in 2017 with Antonio Brown. Brandon Ayuk owners, hope you enjoyed and hope you started Ayuk for his 2 touchdowns and what'll probably be his only touchdowns for the first half of the fantasy season. The Jets defense did amazing as well. You know, they're a really talented group. They're probably going to be playing a lot of defense this year. Permanent friend of the channel, Tony Pollard. We like him. Here's why. He was behind Ezekiel Elliott, who is not a friend of the blog. Back in 2021, when I first started posting on Reddit, I made a comment about Ezekiel Elliott, saying that he might be washed because his really great game towards the beginning of 2021 was with a heavily positive game script. Yeah, I got downvoted to oblivion on that one, so I had to go basically to Reddit Purgatory, also known as Ask Reddit, answer a bunch of random questions until I got my karma back up, in which case I could post again. That was an interesting experience, and I will never forgive Ezekiel Elliott for that. Those that took a gamble on Calvin Ridley were rewarded this week. That was an easy one. Now I'm going to get into the negatives. I've been sapped of all my emotion here, so I'm just going to read some example posts from the Jets subreddit last night to describe some of these negative performances. Christian Kirk. My neighbor just walked out and looked so defeated. Jahmyr Gibbs. I kept my expectations low, and I'm still disappointed. DJ Moore. Spike my drink and put a pillow over my head. Drake London. How can you die if you're already dead? Dallas Goddard. Look what they did to my boy. Josh Allen. My life is everything I feared it would be and nothing I hoped it would become. T. Higgins. I knew they were going to disappoint. Just surprised how quickly they did it. And lastly, the loser of week 1, Joe Burrow. The most robbed I've ever felt in my 30 years as a fan. I couldn't fit this one in, but I'm going to read an excerpt here. Jesus had a few last words, but the one most often repeated is the one performed at Palm Sunday Masses across the world. My God, why have you forsaken me? We as Jets fans know the suffering of Christ better than any NFL team, having seen God and ostensibly seeing him falter when it mattered most. Now, I went to a dark place with the Rodgers injury. I don't know that I went there. Maybe I should have. All right, let's move on to the leaderboards.
I mean, it's one banana, Michael. What could it cost? $10?
There are no MVP leaderboards or least valuable player leaderboards. They'd basically be repeating the winners from week 1. So let's jump right into the return on investment and disappearance of investment leaderboards. Return on investment is Fantasy Games 1 adjusted for graft versus host, for draft capital, where if you took them in the first round, playing with a bit of a handicap, well, the opposite of a handicap. They were a later pick, they get the handicap. DOI is who's done the worst compared to their draft slot. After week 1, the list looks fairly similar to the weekly winners. There are a few exceptions here. There are a lot of kickers and defenses here. They're gonna go away as their variance starts to even itself out.
But they'll soon be back, and in greater numbers.
Brandon Ayuk actually higher up here. Brandon Ayuk was decremented a bit in Fantasy Games 1 because he was only started about 2/3 of the time, but he was drafted much later, round 5 to 6, so he's higher up on the draft adjusted board. Tua's up there for now. By the way, this is the Plate of Jonathan Taylor Promise leaderboard. I might need to change that name. I was kind of reaching when I created these names. And the Allen Robinson Bear Pelt DOI leaderboard. If you've owned Allen Robinson over the past few years, you know why this is named after him. First off, we have Cooper Kupp and Travis Henry up there. They're getting hit hard by the sync numbers. I had to redo the equations for draft-adjusted fantasy, especially for tight ends. Travis Kelce's expectation for his draft slot was something like 16.5 points per game. And the reason for it is Travis Kelce, because he did so well in the last 2 years, being the only tight end drafted in the second or first round. That with only 2 years of data, model thought that that's what you should expect from a tight end, which is kind of absurd. So what I did is I mashed all the different positions together,
Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew.
and came up with an adjustment that was more position agnostic, but it was more fair. So Kelsey's expectations were like 13 something per week, not 16 per like a half PPR scoring system. Still gets hurt by the sync factor here, so he's on the Allen Robinson list. Going down a little bit further, I want to also point out Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase was the 3rd overall pick on average, just behind Justin Jefferson. Really? Is he behind McCaffrey? I didn't even realize. Yeah, I guess McCaffrey was higher here. But he's down almost as far as T. Higgins, though not quite as far. So you're still a little bit more upset if you had T. Higgins on your team. The next list is the Junior Varsity All-Stars. The JV All-Stars are the players that have scored the most on your bench. Top of the list is Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers unfortunately got knocked out of both the game and probably this dimension. Probably not going to get started for a while, so we'll all probably forget about week 1. Especially Jacoby Myers will. Kendrick Bourne, I feel like he does this once in a while. No one really bats an eye at Kendrick Bourne when he has a good week. Tyler Algier, however. Tyler Algier is an interesting one. A lot of people now have been saying that Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson is something like a timeshare. I don't think that's the case, and I don't think a lot of fantasy experts are going to expect that. But a lot of average Joe fantasy owners are going to just put Algier in the lineup. He might keep doing well, and it might just seem like it was a good idea because he keeps doing well. But I think the right idea is to bench him here. It only seems like you had a good draft because your players are doing well. Tua and Ayuk are on this list. Michael Pittman, notably, on this list. Surprisingly good, with a surprisingly good week on the JV squad. Jordan Love's here, huh? Also, Sean McVay. You see, I have this theory. Sean McVay, he didn't want to cut Cam Akers because if you cut Cam Akers, you can't bench him. Really likes benching Cam Akers. Kyron Williams, hope you had him. Now we look at the all-time leaderboard. So this goes back to 2021. Let's look at straight Fantasy Games 1. Cooper Kupp is still on top. This doesn't adjust for draft slot. Tyreek Hill jumping up the board a little bit here. It's interesting that Tyreek Hill in one game got what's almost a good third of a season for like a very good fantasy player. So far, only 5 players have averaged more than 1.5 Fantasy Games 1 per season, and he was at 0.44 after one. I think that really shows how important it is to have a balanced roster where everybody on your team is good. You can't win fantasy football with just one player. Baseball, back in, Barry Bonds when he broke the home run record, or, famously Wayne Gretzky in the 80s, where a lot of fantasy leagues would split him into 2 players, or I guess early 90s maybe did that too. I didn't realize fantasy hockey was a thing back then, but I've heard this story enough where I guess it was. Also, what I think is notable on this list, Deebo Samuel, did we all just forget how awesome he was in 2021? I think he was underdrafted in 2022. Well, maybe not because he didn't have a great 2022. But Deebo was really good in 2021. And he was playing running back a bit, but he was even good before then. There is like a reason they put him at running back. Now that George Kittle's on the list, and now that my face is actually visible to all of you, I can finally ask the question. Who is my actual doppelganger? Is it George Kittle or is it Aaron Baines? I'll let you judge for yourself. There you have it. There's your week 1 update. Hope you enjoyed it. Throughout all of this, I was saltier than a pout-pout fish who had Act 3 torn out of the book by an aggressive toddler. I'm a pout-pout fish with a pout-pout face, and I'm spreading Excel spreadsheets all over the place. I have data for sale. If you want to support the blog and want me to keep doing this, one way to help make sure that happens, if you go to byron-cobalt.com, you can buy the percent started and weekly rankings data for everything I've ever done here. So back to 2021. I have week 1 up here for $1. So encourage you to do that. Obviously, if you liked it, encourage you to like it and do subscribe and comment and everything like that. Remember, no matter how crazy it gets, we're all going down in this fantasy football and, in my case, New York Jets fandom ship together.
Right. That's it then. Goodbye, Ollie. Good luck.
Bye, Bollocks.